Thank you, honourable members. That concludes our debate and discussion of Bill number 5 of 2014. The next bill on our agenda, which I've already referred to, is the Ghana Cricket Administration Bill number 31 of 2012. So that is deferred. We have as well the Marine Persons Property Amendment Bill number 9 of 2013. I believe that that will be deferred as well. And we come to a motion in the name of the Honourable Member Mr. Trevor Williams. I had constantly circulated rulings as to the introduction of these motions. Mr. Williams, are you in a position to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Please. Thank you.
Speaker, rise on behalf of the AFC, the thousands of Chinese whose life this motion is intended to better, to present before the Honorable House the motion that says the reintroduction of the Borges River Ferry service from New Amsterdam to Kwani. Mr. Speaker, the clause of this motion clearly outlines certain important facts about the situation affecting these residents and many others in this very important part of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, this country is called the land of many waters, and that is a title we embrace. It is therefore clear that thousands of Guyanese, by way of residents and industry, will settle and make their livelihoods along our waterways. Therefore, I believe it is important that our government take note of the importance of providing critical, not just infrastructure, but transportation and other important services so that people can settle and enjoy their lives wherever they choose in this our beautiful country. Mr. Speaker, we know that this route was once supplied by more than one vessels, which took persons from New Amsterdam all the way up to Aichuni, positively impacting their way and standard of living, where residents were able to produce and deliver and make a comfortable and reasonable living from occupying and developing their farmlands. Mr. Speaker, when this ferry was removed for whatever reasons, thousands were affected. Many have had to leave their homes and choose to settle in another part of Guyana, unwillingly so, because they could not afford to stay and carry on their lives. But Mr. Speaker, ironically, we've seen over the years that our government, and rightly so, continue to make certain kind of investments in the region, like schools and health centers and building regional centers, etc., encouraging people to remain and settle there. And at the same time, we are not providing them with the means of transporting themselves, families, and their produce. Mr. Speaker, we were there for a number of occasions, and we did consult extensive consultations with the people of the Northeast River. And our consultations were real, and people were participating. We took this matter as a very serious discourse, and we promised that we will raise this issue in the Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I have here two important photographs that I would like to show to this House. What is happening in the Northeast River. As of 2013, this is what the boat looked like that the residents were traveling on.
Very difficult to see.
You know, I always do say that you cannot use pictorial, which I don't agree with, because I think at this stage you should have charts and graphs and be able to have the boards. What you may wish to do is, what is not anything obscene.
Of course not.
The staff will not reproduce anything.
No.
We ask the staff to reproduce and share so that members may follow what is
Likewise. But Mr. Speaker, when this ferry was removed, the route was taken over by private individuals. And this was one of the boats that ran the river until late last year. And I raised it to show you because people have now had to travel along with lumber and sometimes cattle and fuel in very discomforting situations for as much as 20 hours. Women with babies lying and sleeping next to wood and fuel. And indeed, last year a child fell through the top of this boat and nearly died. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have a very important motion requesting that this matter be looked into seriously by our government to be able to restore the livelihood of people in this part of the region. Mr. Speaker, youths are affected. It is no secret to this nation that, and I regret to say this, but it's a fact, that over the years the Berbice River has been one of the places where the production of marijuana has increased. And we were there.
You're speaking on behalf of the residents of the Berbice.
No. I'm stating a fact. That is known. I'm stating a fact that is known. That and Mr. Speaker, regretfully so, the residents would acknowledge that these things come about because people have no work. They have nothing to do. And let me mention clearly that the Alliance of Change is fully against the production, consumption, and circulation of marijuana in this country. If the hands are filled, Mr. Speaker, I brought yet another photograph, but this is one of a collapsing wharf. And this is at Mickey Kalkuni, a very prominent location in the Berbice River, in our Meridian settlement. And things are falling apart because people cannot utilize the services and infrastructures we're offering. How do you encourage people to settle, to work their lands, to stay home and develop themselves, and you do not provide transportation at reasonable cost? Mr. Speaker, from Puerto Rico to Bartica, we run a ferry because there's a great need for heavy cargo. We run a ferry from Puerto Rico to Lake One. We run a ferry from Puerto Rico to Vietnam. We run 2 ferries to Suriname. We run a ferry to the Northwest region. We once run a ferry from Ziglu to Starling. Mr. Speaker, the route from New Amsterdam to Aichili is no less important. And we have seen a total regress and a retardation in these communities where people are literally forced to move out and disappear. When you interact with the residents there, Mr. Speaker, they are sad. So know that the thing they long to do, they can do no longer, to farm and work their lands. Berbice River was known for producing livestock, cattle, food, dairy, forestry, and further up, there is even the bauxite companies operating and running their ships and their barges. Mr. Speaker, this motion is appealing to this House, and at least the government can see its fit to undertake an interest and public study of this route, deciding on re-implementing the Berbice River ferry. Thousands of persons are affected, and we believe that it is a cause that is more than worthy. And it will send a serious message that our our government, and particularly this parliament, is very serious about countrywide development. Mr. Speaker, when the clerk was reading the prayers today, for some reason I listened a little more attentively. And there is one such words in our prayers of this parliament that says that we should deal justly with certain causes that are coming for us. So, Speaker, this is a great cause. And I asked the government of Guyana, I asked the Minister of Transport, Honorable Mr. Rosen, to revisit this issue so that this House can pass, after debate, this motion and send a serious signal to the people of the Northeast region and Northeast that Guyana will develop and we are going to make a production.
Our Minister, Mr. Rosen, Ben,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honorable member for his enduring interest in this matter. I'd like to recall that I believe I did give a couple of years ago the statement with respect to our position on this matter. And I would also like to state that we campaigned rather than be feasible on this issue at the last elections on the Fortis River, the upper Fortis River, where we said that we will restore ferry services, viable ferry services to the communities of river. Mr. Speaker, I recall also saying what would be the deployment of our older riverine assets, maritime assets, those which go to the Northwest District, when we put in place a new ferry vessel for the Northwest District. And at that time, I recall saying, particularly, that when the new ferry vessel comes in place for the Northwest District, those assets which now, I believe I said that the North Port will be retired, the Barima will be used as a trading vessel, and the Kimbia would return to the Berbice River to fly that route to respond to the development that is again unfolding in the area. We have, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, approached the government of India with designs, proposed specifications for a new ferry vessel for the Northwest District. We anticipate the current arrangements, designs that we'll have, hopefully, I don't want to be specific or emphatic about it, that by the end of this year this matter be resolved. But I do not want to be specific because the designs have to be completed, accepted, and the vessel built. And I repeat that the Kimbia, which was specifically designed for the Berbice River ferry service, will return to the Berbice River at that time. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I would like to point out that the degradation in services directly from the government with respect to the river ferry service on the Berbice happened a long time ago. Happened a long time ago. And that the Kimbia was not removed because there was production. In fact, it was removed because the efforts, some of us would say that those efforts were heroic, to produce coconut kimia, to produce black eyed peas and other things, and red beans, that those efforts failed, that the economy and the upper Bordeaux River went down, that the bauxite itself was impacted, and that gradually people moved out from the communities, and all the old estates and farms were going back into the bush. But fairly recently, and even now, Mr. Chairman and honorable members, the fact is that we have been able to restore the land, overland transport into the upper Bordeaux River, to Kokwani, and to Araima, Mapletown, and that alternative is there as we speak, and that through the Ministry of Local Government and the efforts of other ministries, both have been provided to the communities to deal with their transportation arrangements, the logistics, to the points in which they could access overland transport. And now that we are having indeed a response in terms of revival of agriculture and revival of forestry in the area, particularly forestry, I think, in terms of heavy transport, heavy bulk cargo, that it is now, as we anticipated, now the time when this service will be put in place. Our approach to this matter, as I said, has been proactive. The solutions are at hand. I again want to congratulate the honorable member on his interest in, and the interest of the party too in the matter. It affords our interest. It affords the activities that we are undertaking to resolve this problem, to respond to the growth in the area, and to respond to the increase in population in the area, because that is actually what is happening. That there is a healthier population in the area. There is a population that is going in more into agricultural activities, not only farming, but the forestry-related activities, and that the recourse, the overland recourse, is not necessarily the most efficient one at this time in terms of a distance to places for overland transport, but that we are dealing with this matter. I would like to point out that there was no unilateral removal of the critical service from the area. There was no unilateral removal of the service. And there is a suggestion that the removal of the service in itself created the abandonment and the desertation in the Fort Whereas clause of significant economic activities. I recently went to Makaruma to raise our national flag on our independence or Republic anniversary. And one of the discussions I was having with the persons of the regional chairman and others we met with was the question of having cargoes to come out on the boats. Because even now in the Northwest District, we have a difficulty where you have a weekly service into the area, either from Maka, from Makaruma, and at Port Kaituma, or from Matthews Bridge in Arakaka, and the surrounding areas, that there is insufficient cargo coming out from the areas. And that we have to have and to revitalize, as we are trying to do, agricultural work in the area, so that we return to the days when the boat came back filled, rather than the boat going up filled, now but coming back empty, because of the question of the labor costs, the question of moving into the gold fields, or doing work in the harvest farm and other activities. The fact of the matter is that the ferry service declines on the Berbice River. At that time, boat was removed, not in the period, that is not in the period of this PPP civic in government, but at the time of the previous government, previous to the PPP civic, because there was nothing to bring out on boats. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the resolution clause calls on us to restore the service and revive the communities and give hope and stability to the many Guyanese who wish to venture into agricultural entrepreneurship. We agree with this resolution clause, and we state emphatically that this is the activity we have been working on and which we're about. And so we really have no difficulty in going along in according perhaps with what we're already doing here. We go along with what we're already doing here, advising again that we are already pursuing this activity on the ground with respect to reintroducing a viable Berbice River ferry service. I thank you.
I invite Mr. Joseph, Lieutenant Colonel Harman to address us, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you're here, sorry. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the motion moved by my colleague, Mr. Trevor Williams, requesting that the House, by resolution, call on the government of Guyana to restore the ferry service along the Berbice River. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Honorable Minister give what I would consider to be an open-ended commitment that the ferry service will be reintroduced sometime shortly. But, Mr. Speaker, I would wish to remind the Honorable Minister that this matter came before this very House in 2007 on a question by the PNCR MP, Dr. John Austin, who queried if the government was going to reintroduce the ferry service to ease the transportation woes of Berbice River residents. The answer which I believe was given, and I see Minister Bellas being credited a statement on the matter. He said that while the service was intended to be a catalyst for both community and economic development within the area, that on many occasions the vessel would depart to Amsterdam, Stanley Town with a full load of passengers and cargo. However, on the return journey, mostly agricultural produce, including Walaba poles and staves, were transported as cargo. The service was eventually terminated in 1995, Mr. Bennett, not under the PNC. The service was eventually terminated in 1995.
Speaker, on a point of clarification, I did not say that the service was terminated. I said that the large vessel Kimbia, an extremely large vessel designed for the Berbice River ferry service, was removed from the river service in the time before the PPP came to government. And I will further clarify that a much smaller vessel called the Lukanani was a vessel which was being subsequently, which service was converted to private operation in 1995. Just for clarification.
Go ahead,
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The statement I made for my honorable friend there about the termination of service, now you hear why it was terminated again. That the service was eventually terminated in 1995, and the MP of Kanani was sold to a private citizen who continued to operate the service until he too encountered economic difficulties. That's the first part. Mr. Speaker, secondly, I refer to an article carried in the Caribbean News on the 8th of May. In fact, let me go before that. An article carried in the Saarbrück News, dated May 27, 2008. And it says this: New Amsterdam to Pokwani Ferry before year end. The Minister of Transport and Hydraulics, Rosenberg, quoted that prior to resumption of the service of the area, inspection of the walls along the river will be done to determine what repairs are needed. Then, on May 8, 2009, in an edition of the Caribbean News under the caption, New Amsterdam Pokwani Ferry Service to Return, the General Manager of the Transport and Harbors Department, at that time, Mr. Kevin Trim, reported that the New Amsterdam Pokwani Ferry Service, which was terminated nearly 2 decades ago, will be reintroduced shortly. He further echoed that the Lady Northwood assigned to the Transport and Harbors was recently taken off the Parika-Bartica route and is to be reassigned to this service at the end of this stint in dry docks for repairs. That was in 2009. So, Mr. Speaker, you will understand why I take very little comfort from the assurance given by the Honorable Minister that sometime by the end of this year or sometime shortly thereafter, that we are going to have the reintroduction of the Berbice Ferry. Mr. Speaker,
this motion by the Honorable Williams, and also the support of my colleague, Honorable Vanessa Kissoon, supporting this motion. We are well aware of the work of the ferry in Torres River. We are well aware of the hardships that the people have suffered because of the removal of this ferry. Moreover, we benefited from the work that went on in Berbice River by way of the produce that came out of that community. Hence, I rise to lend my support on behalf of myself and the residents of Region 10 in support of the motion and the resolve clause asking this Honourable House to move the government, watch this, I'm looking for the right word, but encourage the government to replace this ferry, especially in view that it will support the indigenous people's development in Region 10. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Is anyone from the AFC wishing to, other than Mr. William, that? If not, I invite Honourable Minister, Mr. Whittaker, Honourable Member to address us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, every year for our annual budget, we allocate a substantial amount of resources in inter alia at developing and improving infrastructure throughout the 83,000 square miles of this country. I emphasize this to emphasize the point. We do not discriminate. We do not limit the extent of our interventions to particular areas or particular regions. It's across the 83,000 square miles of this country. Scarce resources, competing needs and uses for these resources, and this determined that we have to make choices, to make decisions premised on the opportunity cost of the decisions that we make. And so it is often necessary, indeed it is always necessary, that we, in allocating how we use these resources, that we look at the alternatives. So we must ask ourselves, is there an alternative to spending X dollars now in a particular way as against spending it tomorrow? Mr. Speaker, my inquiry has led me to understand and appreciate, in the first instance, that the decision to discontinue the ferry service, that decision in 1995 was premised on the financial strain behind its operation, and that strain was affecting the delivery of other services. And so what we see is private-public partnership going way back as far as then. It was the expectation of our government, the PPP civic government, that the service that was being provided, the transportation service, would continue. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, it did continue until an unfortunate accident which caused a tug to crash into the Bukanani that was at that time provided the service, forced a discontinuation of the service. But having said that, I need to add, because the motion suggests that we unilaterally remove the service. In fact, that is not true. As I pointed out, the service was sold and it was being continued until we had this unfortunate accident. It is suggested further that many of these communities were abandoned and deserted, and that individuals, families, organizations, institutions from communities that benefited from the service now have to severely alter their way of living. My inquiry, Mr. Speaker, reveals that the prime users of the service were students going from Region 5 to Region 6 to attend secondary school, at a time when there were few secondary schools in that region. And I'm happy to know that the number of secondary schools have now moved from 4 to 9, so that there is no need to have that movement of students going to New Amsterdam for their secondary education. Add to that the fact of the Berbice Bridge crossing, a cheap reliable form of transportation. And so I do not know how the removal of the service affects and continues to affect, as the motion suggests, that category of user, the student. The motion suggests also that our farmers had to relocate some of them, alter their way of living, but the information I have suggests different. I'm not aware that farmers have been abandoning their farms as the motion suggests. To the contrary, I am aware that a substantial number of these farmers are using the river crossing which exists, and a substantial number of these farmers are also using the private service that exists. More than this, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, government, through the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs, through the Ministry of Local Government, through the Ministry of Finance, has ensured that in most of the communities along that route, and incidentally, the ferry didn't often, it seldom went to Pukwan. Most of the time it stopped at Wiki Kalpuni, for your information, gentlemen and ladies. Most of the time that's where it stopped. It didn't go to Pukwan. But through Agrarian Affairs, local government, and other sector ministries, we have been able to make available to all those, most of those communities, and I'll name them, most of those communities outboard engines and boats which they can use and which they have been using to transport people and commodities. These include Sand Hills, Kimbia, Wairuni, Ururu, Wiki Kalpuni. In each of these communities, we have at least one, in two of them, there are two boats and engines that are used to move people and move farm produce from the community to the market. So it's not as if we abandoned the people and left them to their own whims and whatever they can manage to do. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, through the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs and under their Secure Livelihood Program, a number of these communities have been assisted with economic projects, including farming. So I find it difficult to accept that, as implied in the motion, that we have abandoned the people who relied on the ferry service. In fact, that is not so. I said earlier on, Mr. Speaker, that we need to prioritize. We need to examine what obtains in all 10 regions. In the case of, let's say, Region 1, for example, Region 1, where the population that uses that service is much larger, where the alternative means of transportation is not as in Region 6. One can now move from Pukwan all the way by road to Georgetown, to Linden, and to Georgetown. One can still use the river transportation that is available. But when you talk about going to Region 1, you are talking about traveling for some 20 or more hours, as distinct from traveling 5 or 6 hours. And these are considerations that are very important. Mr. Speaker, I do not think that the honorable members are aware, but the Office of the President has provided significant funding, and the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs has been engaging the communities of Sand Hills and Wairuni, and funds have been made available for the construction of a 60-feet boat that will provide passenger and freight services. In fact, the engine to be used on that boat has already been acquired and is in the possession of the Ministry of Environmental Affairs. Okay? This boat is in the final stages of construction, and upon completion, it will be used to transport passengers, farm produce, school children, and to New Amsterdam and vice versa. Mr. Speaker, today, steamer service and the demand for that service as a relatively cheap and effective form of transportation has been declining. With the emergence of small and faster vessels that ply our rivers daily, this is an acceptable fact. And if, I don't know how many of you who speak on that side have been traversing the Burbage River area, but smaller vessels, because of the comfort, the time, etc., have been the order of the day. In some areas, however, more so over long distances, and especially where alternative modes of transportation are non-existent or too costly, the steamer service has continued to play an important role. Mr. Speaker, whilst I will join with my colleague in supporting the need for us to reintroduce the service and the fact that we intend to, again I say that it is not as if we abandon the residents. It is not as if we abandon the users of the service. We have in the interim put in place measures which would allow people within that area to move from their homes to their destination and vice versa. I wish to conclude, sir, by saying that river transport we appreciate as an important aspect of development in terms of being able to move goods and services from one point to another. But I also wish to add that this need exists across all 10 regions, some more than some. And so that in taking a decision as to which we do first and which we do second, we must be conscious of that. We must be aware of that. I join with my colleague on this side in supporting, and the other side in supporting this motion to restore the service, but I say to you that whilst we would like to see this happen, the people of Region 1 who travel for 20+ hours per day, who do not have the luxury of the alternatives that those farmers and others have, would wish to be given that priority. Thank you very much.
Mr. Williams, you may reply.
Sir, I wish to thank all the members who in support of this motion. Firstly, the Honorable Minister for broadly acknowledging the importance of this issue and the very many needs that exist in these communities, and also giving us some sort of a snapshot into what he described as the government's plan in this region, with ongoing works and consultations, etc. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to acknowledge the Minister's acknowledgement that the ferry service discussed is used across a number of areas, for example, the carrying of heavy cargo and contributing to infrastructure development. So this vessel, as requested, really speaks to a number of areas across the region. I was hoping that this information that the Honorable Minister gave us would have been shared with Mr. Minister Whitaker. Because he's clearly indirectly refuting the subject minister's position on this issue. And I will come to that. I also wish to commend the Honorable Member, Mr. Joe Harmon, for citing and recalling very important discussion on this issue which for a number of years has been in the public domain by the media, and reminding our Honorable Minister himself about comments made previously, which of course tells us that the issue is very much alive and interesting. And persons just Mr. Minister, we did remind him of that. I thank Mr. Moria, the Honorable Member, to, of course, recognizing the direct link of the people of Region 10 again, and this proves that this ferry has been understood widely as a necessity and a vibrant piece of support to the livelihoods of people across this region. And of course, the river distance, we're talking about well over 100 miles. Now I come out to Honorable Minister Whitaker, because he mentioned that, you know, the communities were given boats and engines, you know, to substitute this journey. Honorable Minister, I don't know if you know of any place in this country where people travel by speedboat, except in Northwest, for probably about 100 miles. Different kinds of cost. Except in Northwest and the interior. Over, let me repeat that. Over 100 miles of traveling with speedboat in Guyana is a significant cost. If you're talking about 10, 15, 20, and how much more $1,000, get those money from speedboat travel. I also wish to point out to the Honorable Minister that there is right now there is no boat, there's no speedboat running on the Borrows River from New Amsterdam to 1999. Absolutely. And I hope the Honorable Minister is not mixing up inter-community travel and moving from one community to the next against taking the entire journey from New Amsterdam to Aichulu. I am aware, Mr. Speaker, that indeed the ferry does not go to Kupani or stops primarily at Aichulu and Kikalkuli, but people continue from there in their smaller vessels. And so, this notion that the government of Guyana has given substitute mechanisms for this journey is really not the reality with what we experience in the river. I know there are community boats, there are school boats who fetch students from place to place, but there's no boat, and I repeat, that runs from New Amsterdam to Wikikalkuni or Aichulu fetching passengers. There is a launch, and I have to distinguish, there's a difference between a ferry and a launch. Alright? The picture I give you,
there's a picture of you,
those people.
there's a picture of yourself.
It's a picture of myself.
That's the wrong one.
No, there's one of those. And that is a launch. And that is not a boat that is given by the government to this country. That doesn't hold on board engines. It's a collapsing launch that was run by a private individual with the intent to substitute and provide what the ferry used to do. So, Mr. Speaker, the clauses in the motion remain very accurate and intact, and so is the intent. We have traveled, traversed the communities, interacted with the residents who has furnished us this information. That there is absolute and urgent need.
I think there's a point of order.
Just point of clarification. There is a boat service between Wikikalkuni and New Amsterdam. It goes and comes twice a week. Good. I have here, I can make it available to you, sir, text from a former Tusha who lives at Tururu, who has confirmed this. Also, the villages, as I said, all of them have their own. Some have 2 boats and engines. They choose when they want to travel. That is regular.
I think the thrust of the motion was that the government service should be reintroduced because the private contracting, it was proving to be oppressive to the residents of the region. That was my understanding of the motion. That the cost is oppressive or inadequate or insufficient. So there may be a board going, but I think that's what Mr. Williams was addressing on the
This is the reason I brought the photograph here. Because the launch, that Moroccan vessel, that runs from Wiki, Kalkuni, actually to New Amsterdam, which takes 20 hours, which I did say in my presentation initially. That is not the speedboat. It is a private contractor, and this is really the kind of service provided to the residents. So, the other minister in his comments talked about the government providing people and engines. And I said, none runs the distance. There are inter-community travels for school, health, police, etc. But the issue of having a ferry covered with the joint from Amsterdam to actually is what the motion seeks to address. So, Mr. Speaker, once again, I thank those who have supported and understood in this context what this motion is to address. And I anticipate the National Assembly's full support. Thank you for all.
Let's go to which propose the motion. And so I ask the question. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. This is an appropriate time for us to take the suspension for 1 hour, and so we will do so. At this time, I wish